and mandatory CPP contributions, but won't actually go to CPP, keeping those low so that industry can continue to create jobs for the very kind of people that everybody on all sides of this floor want to help. Thank you, Mr.
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre will have 7 minutes when we resume debate on this topic after question period. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député de Richmond.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 11th Golf Tournament of Quebec police officers in Athabasca for Envol will take place on June 18th at the Victoriaville Golf Club. It is with great pride that I will be honorary president, even though I do feel sorry for my golf partners, Mr. Speaker. More than 250 golfers and more than 300 guests are expected this year. The Envol Simulation Centre provides stimulation activities and recreational activities for children 1 to 12 years old who suffer from developmental disorders, including communication disorders. They also provide expertise and knowledge-sharing activities that will foster the independence of children and provide support to their families. It was founded in 1996 by Marguerite Bourgeois, who was the mother of 2 children with communication disorders and who had noticed that these kinds of services did not exist. The Envol Stimulation Centre is now renowned for the quality of its services after having begun in Ms. Bourgeois' basement. Last year, police officers raised $18,000 for Envol. I'd like to thank them as well as all participants and volunteers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
Mr. Speaker, recently we have witnessed good progress in the advancement of key democratic principle of free and fair elections. I want to congratulate the people of Sri Lanka, of Turkey, of Nigeria, and Mexico, to name a few, where the people have exercised their democratic right to choose their leaders peacefully despite strong armed tactics. Let me give a few examples, Mr. Speaker. The defeat of former President Rajapaksa in Sri Lanka, the loss of the majority of President Erdogan party in Turkey, the change of government in Nigeria, where I attended the new president's inauguration. However, sadly, there are countries where this democratic right is denied. Few examples are Iran, Thailand, Eritrea, and Maldives. Mr. Speaker, this government is proud to have a strong record of supporting democracy and the protection of human rights around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for New Westminster, Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to mark World Oceans Day, an international event that draws attention to the threats facing our marine ecosystem, celebrates oceans, and encourages conservation. This year's theme is Healthy Oceans, Healthy Planet, which is intended to bring awareness to the approximately 8 million tons of plastic entering our oceans every year, and on ways to decrease our reliance on plastic materials. Plastic destroys marine life and puts our marine ecosystem at risk. It is the #1 source of pollution in our ocean today. We need government policy that conserves, protects, and restores our oceans. This must include meeting our UN commitment to protect 10% of Canada's oceans and lakes in marine protected areas. The time to act is now. Let's help our oceans today and every day. I encourage all members of the House to participate in World Oceans Day by attending the World Oceans Day reception on the Hill today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear, hear.
The honourable member for Okanagan-Shuswap.
Mr. Speaker, I'm taking this opportunity to acknowledge the 3 staff that have worked with and supported me over the past 9 years. I have served as a Member of Parliament for Okanagan-Shuswap. Jeanette Gasparini, my Ottawa Executive Assistant, and in the riding, Penny Rennick, my Constituency Office Manager, and Tammy Martin, my Constituency Community and Communication Assistant, who has ensured that I was in the right place at the right time, saying the right things. Ladies, you have made being an MP easy. Thank you. Thank you also to the many people from the constituency that have served on my EDA board and those that have worked on my 3 successful election campaigns. And to my bride of 45 years, thank you for making everything I do better. Without you at my side, I'm only half the servant I should be. I know you'll be missed by the MP and Senator spouses that you have encouraged over the years. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for being a principled and courageous leader. It has been an honour to be part of your team. Finally, thank you to all those in this place that serve our great nation. And may God bless you as you serve, and may God bless Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bonavista, Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Mr. Alan Roberts of Wild Cove, Twillingate, who passed away on May 30th at the age of 93. Alan's early years had a rough start. He lost his mother at the tender age of 2, started in the workforce with his father at the age of 12, building boats in the winter and, of course, fishing in the summer. He served as a gunner during the Second World War, losing his hearing while bravely fighting on the front lines. In 1960, Alan started a new career as a lightkeeper at the Long Point Lighthouse. Alan was known as a kind, gentle, patient, fun-loving man. He always had an exciting story to share with his children and grandchildren who listened in awe of his adventures. He was dedicated to community service as a member of the church board, working with youth and lending a hand when needed. He was also an avid reader and enjoyed writing poetry. We say goodbye today. However, Alan's legacy will live on in our hearts. Mr. Alan Roberts, lovingly remembered and will never be forgotten. Thank you.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize the founder of Global Vision and former parliamentarian Terry Clifford and Junior Team Canada ambassadors that have joined us in Ottawa today to celebrate Global Vision's 25 years of producing today's global leaders. These youth represent Canadian communities from coast to coast to coast and have worked together to develop innovative ways to actively involve their peers in civic engagement, economic and community projects as we pave the road towards 2017. Throughout their hard work as Junior Team Canada ambassadors, they've demonstrated their true attachment to Canada, helping to build stronger, more viable communities. This would not have been possible without the valuable partnerships with universities, colleges, Canadian Heritage, Parks Canada, First Air, and providing youth the unique opportunity to understand Canada beyond their own backyard. I encourage them to continue to get involved, take action, and be engaged as today's generation of leaders. Thank you, Terry.
The honourable member for Montmorency, Charlevoix, Haute-Côte-Nord. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with great pleasure that I draw your attention to the 3rd St. Lawrence River Week. This event is especially important to me because along its north shore, this majestic river flows the length of my riding for 350 kilometers from Quebec City to Colombier. I would like to tell all my fellow citizens how important it is to get to know our river and to realize how fragile it is and how interdependent we all are. We benefit in so many ways from this great waterway that it is well worth sharing our gratitude and showing our gratitude by becoming personally involved in defending and preserving it for future generations. Let us all take advantage of this event to show our support by attending the many activities taking place during St. Lawrence Week. Thank you.
Honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that the Toronto 2015 Pan Am Games torch will be passing through my riding of Dufferin-Caledon this weekend. On Friday, June the 12th, the torch will travel from Shelburne to the town of Mono and finally to Orangeville, where it will stop for the evening. The town of Orangeville will be hosting a spectacular event as a major celebration community. The next morning on Saturday, June 13th, the torch will leave Orangeville and will travel through Palgrave, Bolton, Inglewood, Bellefontaine, Alton, and finally arrive in Caledon East, where the town of Caledon will be hosting another outstanding event as a major celebration community. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of these two communities in my riding, have been selected as major celebration communities during the torch's travels from May 30th to July 10th. Excuse me, I encourage everyone to join the wonderful celebrations taking place that will showcase the very best our province and communities have to offer the world.
Let's go. Honourable member for Perth, Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I approach retirement, I am struck by the gratitude I have for those who have supported me, those who have challenged me, and those I have had the privilege to serve. I've had the pleasure of working with the staff of the House of Commons, foreign diplomats, and our public service. I would like to thank my colleagues on both sides of this House for their help and support along the way. I thank my staff, both here and at home, some of whom have been with me since I was first elected. I would like to recognize Les Broadfoot, who suggested I go into politics. And I cannot begin to express my thanks for my wife, Judy, and our family, who have been by my side throughout this journey. I will always remain indebted to my constituents for their faith in me for these past 12 years. It has been a great honor to serve Canada in this wonderful House. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, 11 ports and wharves in our area will be sold or ceded under the Federal Ports Transfer Program. These facilities are necessary for the economic development and survival of municipalities in our region, especially those that are not accessible by road. They are used for, among other purposes, to supply coastal villages with commodities and fuel, and they are essential to the commercial fishery. However, the federal government announced its transfer program without giving any clear and specific information about the funding required for maintenance and upgrading of these facilities before they are transferred. Many municipalities want to make sure that the government is providing them with sufficient financial support given how old and outdated many of these facilities are. And therefore, we call upon the Minister of Transport to provide us with details about this as soon as possible.
The Honourable Member for Glengarry, Prescott Russell. Mr. Speaker, it is an honour to rise today to mark the visit to Canada of Randolph Churchill, the great-grandson of the great Sir Winston Churchill. I would also like to note that this visit was organised by Ron Cowan, who is the president of the Churchill Societies of Ottawa. Sir Winston Churchill provides the example of leadership on the world stage for modern-day political leaders. It is because of his strong and principled leadership that I have the freedom today to give this statement. Churchill once remarked in Quebec City that, quote, "The spirit of freedom has found a safe and abiding home in Canada." These words remain true today more than ever. Mr. Speaker, I would ask the House to join me in recognizing the legacy and life of one of history's greatest leaders, Sir Winston Churchill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize a hero today. Because of his service in World War II, London's own Michael Sidorko is now a Knight of the National Order of the Legion of Honour of the Republic of France. Born in Lac-du-Bonnet, Manitoba, Michael served with the 4th Armoured Division of the Lake Superior Regiment of the Canadian Army. The Lake Supes, as they came to be known, played a vital role in the liberation of France and the Netherlands from Nazi occupation. Michael volunteered for duty as a teenager and risked his life for the liberty of others. He has the distinction of being the only Canadian soldier to disarm U.S. General George Patton, who, after relinquishing his arms, complimented Sidorko's pluck by saying he'd like to have him in his unit. The distinction of knighthood is just one of many military honors Michael has received over the years, and it is France's highest honor. Michael is one of fewer than 40 Canadians to receive it. It is only fitting that he be recognized and honored in this House today.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board has an independent mandate that is crystal clear to serve the best interests of hard-working Canadians who have paid into it. The board is responsible for investing CPP funds prudently in a diversified portfolio of assets to the benefit of CPP contributors and beneficiaries. This helps ensure that the retirement funds Canadians rely on remain safe and secure. But the Liberal leader is planning to pay for his irresponsible spending by, quote, alternative sources of capital, such as pension funds. And it gets worse. The Liberal leader also said of his spending schemes, quote, it is time for a new revenue source, end quote. Canadians know what that means. Another tax hike from the Liberal leader. Right. To the Liberal leader, we say, hands off Canadians' pension plans.
Right on. The honourable member for Cardigan.
Mr. Speaker, today is World Oceans Day. I'm proud that previous Liberal governments had made a strong tradition when it comes to our oceans. We introduced the Oceans Act in 1996, Canada's Ocean Strategy in 2002, and Canada's Ocean Action Plan in 2005. Unfortunately, this Conservative government is lost at sea when it comes to protecting our oceans. DFO research centres have been cut or shut down. The Marine Contaminants Program is gone. DFO libraries and water pollution labs are gone. Scientists have been fired or muscled. And the Fisheries Act was gutted. Conservation offices closed, ocean management cut, Pennsema eliminated, and the list goes on. Mr. Speaker, a Liberal government would continue our period of tradition and ensure the protection and preservation of Canada's oceans and marine resources. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Miramichi.
Yesterday was Canadian Army Day, an opportunity to thank you to the men and women in uniform who stand on guard for Canada, the true North, strong and free.
Thank God for
We
that.
are all blessed to call Canada home, and our military keeps us safe, serving us at home and abroad in times of both peace and conflict, ready for duty at a moment's notice. On behalf of my constituency of Miramichi and all colleagues here today, I wish to extend our sincere appreciation to the soldiers, sailors, and aviators who keep Canada safe.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, for all those Conservative members who believed that they were going to change a Liberal culture of secrecy in Ottawa, it must have been a pretty rude awakening, Mr. Speaker. 4. Guess what? Who did the Canadian Association of Journalists give its Code of Silence Award to this weekend? Well, of course, it was to the federal Conservative government, Mr. Speaker. These are the same Conservatives who were the promise to clean up, to manage our affairs transparently, and to restore Canadians' trust in government. In the end, Mr. Speaker, after 10 years in power, what Canadians have seen instead is Conservatives tampering with reports before they are made public in order to protect their friends, and blatantly censoring documents requested under the Access to Information Act. It's not surprising, Mr. Speaker, the Canadians have had enough of this tired government. Next October, Canadians will not have to vote for a secretive Conservative or Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. They'll finally be able to vote for an open and transparent government, a new democratic government.
On Friday, the Liberal leader revealed that he will pay for his irresponsible spending by, and I quote, alternative sources of capital, such as pension funds, end quote. It would be highly irresponsible for the Liberal leader to jeopardize Canadians' retirement security to fund his wild spending promises. If that wasn't enough, the Liberal leader is also promising to look for a new revenue source. Canadians know exactly what that means when a Liberal promises a new revenue source. It's higher taxes on the middle class. While the leader of the Liberal Party is promising to raise taxes and put at risk the pensions of Canadians to pay for his massive spending, our government will continue to reduce taxes and protect pensions.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
$1 million in fraudulent claims by 30 senators. 9 senators immediately referred to the police. The Conservative and Liberal leaders in the Senate and the Prime Minister's hand-picked choice for Speaker are all on the list. Did the Prime Minister know about Leo Housakos' spending habits before naming him Speaker of Canada's Senate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you know, Senator Housakos has already answered that question. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, it was the Senate that actually invited in the Auditor General to review all of their expenses, Mr. Speaker, and we anxiously await their report and the Senate's response tomorrow.
And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, here's what Senator Housakos did say over the weekend. Quote, "We in the Senate should be thanked by the population for our actions." That's a direct quote. No wonder Canadians are fed up. Leo Housakos is a close ally of the Prime Minister. He was appointed Senate Speaker just a month ago. Now he has set up an arbitration process that has allowed senators like himself to dispute the Auditor General's findings. Has the Prime Minister's office been in touch with Senator Housakos about this scandal? Is the Prime Minister's office once again orchestrating the response to the most recent Senate scandal?
Speaker, as you know, it was the Senate that invited the Auditor General in to examine all of their expenses. The report is due tomorrow. We anxiously await this report and the response from the Senate.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have the right to clear answers. It's their money. We are talking about this Prime Minister's appointments. We're talking about fiddling with audit reports, and we all know the role played by employees in the Prime Minister's office in the Duffy scandal, particularly by his chiefs of staff, Ray Novak and Nigel Wright. That's clear now. The question now is to know what role the Prime Minister's office is playing in this most recent fiasco in the Senate. Who was aware and who was in contact with Senator Leo Hosakos to manage this most recent crisis in Canada's Senate? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, it's the Senate that invited the Auditor General in to study their expenses, and we are awaiting that report tomorrow, and I hope that the Senate will be responding immediately.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this is another file that the Conservatives are piling up problems on, and that is climate change. Whether it's their national plan that has no ambition, the inadequate or inexistent ceilings for emissions, or the withdrawal from the Kyoto Protocol. Today we've learned that it's Canada that has toned down the G7 communique on climate change. Why is the Prime Minister stubbornly insisting on making Canada a global pariah in terms of the fight against climate change? Mr. Speaker, the G7 has a strong and unanimous statement on climate change. Our budget is announcing the steps that we are taking to address climate change and to protect our environment. Our government has reduced emissions and taxes on middle-class families, and we balanced the budget. What do the Liberals and the NDP want? To increase taxes for middle-class families, plunge Canada back into deficit, and pursue a carbon tax that would kill jobs?
Speaker, the G7 is calling for a complete phase-out of fossil fuels by the end of this century. So far, the only thing that the Conservatives have been phasing out are environmental protections. Canada is the only country in the world to have withdrawn from the Kyoto Protocol. When will this government deliver a real, credible plan to fight climate change instead of leaving Canada with an environmental black eye on the world stage?
Here, here. Mr. Speaker, our government's record is clear. We have reduced emissions while growing the economy and creating good-paying jobs. We'll continue to take a responsible and a balanced approach. Building on this, we will reduce methane emissions from the oil and gas sector, regulate the production of chemicals and nitrogen fertilizers, and regulate emissions from natural gas-fired electricity generation. The Liberals and the NDP, on the other hand, want high taxes on the middle-class families, high taxes on middle-class seniors, and high taxes on middle-class consumers, Mr. Speaker. We're not going to go there.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa South.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend, the global economic situation served as a smokescreen for the Minister of Finance, who tried to explain the need for chopping almost 90% out of the infrastructure budget. At the same time, the Prime Minister signed a G7 communique asking for an increase in investments in infrastructure in order to stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, who speaks on behalf of this government? Why two different positions in Canada and abroad? Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague knows very well that the new infrastructure plan that is already underway started last April, and it is the biggest in the history of our country. The Liberals, we are working with the partners in partnership with the municipalities and provinces. I know it doesn't suit the NDP who want to raise taxes for everyone. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to respect our partners.
Mr. Speaker, at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference in Edmonton this weekend, the cities and towns across Canada were treated to a new version of the old classic Oliver Twist. On transit, urban leaders are pleading with this government, please, please, just a little more. Instead, what they got from the stage was a spin on the old classic. What they got was Oliver's Twisted. The finance minister barked to municipal leaders. He said, get real, cities. You can expect less from this government. Cities and towns are clear. They need infrastructure dollars, and they need them now, and they want them now. Instead, this government has orphaned Canadian municipalities. When does the transit money come, and why doesn't it come now, and when are you going to give us more?
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, I disagree completely with the question and the premise of that question, and he knows it very well. Twice a year,
transferring money to provinces and municipalities 2 times a year for gas tax. That's each year. They already received a lot, and they are applying for the New Building Canada plan, and he knows that. I know that's not the way they worked when they were in power. I remember this era because, like many others, 27 of our members were former municipal politicians.
That's right. Honourable member for Trinity Spadina. You can twist it all you want. The transit funds you've promised won't come for years. For years. And when it does come, what we found out this weekend is that they're only coming for a few choice cities. At the SCM meeting, the Minister of State for Western Diversification said the funds are for big cities only. That wasn't in the budget. And then the Finance Minister said it's only for a few major projects, not for every city in the country. It's always the small print with this government. They're always playing one side off against another, one city off against another. Why won't the Minister of Finance invest in cities now, treat all cities fairly, and come clean on the budget?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite is twisting Dickens and twisting the facts. Yes. The facts are we're building on an $80 billion infrastructure program, the biggest and longest in the history of Canada. We're very proud of the transit plan. It's going to deal with the critical issue for municipalities, which is traffic gridlock. The money will be available when the projects need them.
The Honourable Member for Hochelaga. The Liberals and the Conservatives left us with a $172 billion debt by neglecting our infrastructure. That's why the NDP will invest 1 penny more on the gas tax so that cities like Montreal can repair our roads and our bridges. That's $1.5 billion more that's given currently. The NDP will also invest $1.3 billion in mass transit. Will the government adopt the NDP's plan to invest in a stable, long-term manner in our infrastructure? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, the NDP wants to increase by giving value to carbon. $20 billion is what they want people to pay. So it's easy to promise programs, Mr. Speaker, and to say that we're going to improve things by increasing taxes. But we have just delivered the most amazing infrastructure program in the history of this country by reducing taxes. We're working with cities so that they don't have to pay too much, and I was even there yesterday. The Honourable Member for Brossard-La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the Conservatives' plan doesn't work. In the greater metropolitan region of Montreal, the consensus is clear. Bridges are crumbling, and this is costing billions of dollars. People are late for work and to daycare. It's precious time that parents are on the road instead of with their children. The NDP will invest in transit. We need to repair our highways, bridges, and roads. Will the Conservatives work with the municipalities as the NDP would, or are they still once again going to hand the bill to future generations? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are working more with municipalities than the NDP. Rather than promising them things, we deliver things. And I want to remind my colleague that 93% of infrastructure is the property of municipalities and provinces. We've been partners with them since 2006, and never has a government invested more in infrastructure than ours, but always respecting areas of jurisdiction. NDP wants to make all the decisions in Ottawa. We want to take decisions alongside our partners.
Mr. Speaker, recently the Conservative MP from Calgary Centre decided that the best way to fix the lack of needed funding for her city was not to fight for more help, but to attack the mayor of Calgary. She lectured that he should hurry up and get on with applications for new federal dollars. Well, newsflash, Calgary has applied 3 times. 2 of them they rejected, and the 3rd one Conservatives are sitting on. No wonder Mayor Nenshi said that the Conservative approach is, and I quote, doesn't make any sense at all. So rather than attacking Canadian mayors, rather than just representing Ottawa talking points in their hometowns, why don't Conservatives work with the mayors, work with the NDP, and fight for the people who actually sent you here?
Speaker, when we have built the new building Canada Fund, we have held 13 roundtables across the country, and one organization I've been invited to all of them. That's the FCM. They were there at the table with us, and we continue to work with them. And Mr. Speaker, like the member knows, there just happened a provincial election in Alberta. We continue to work, and we will continue to work.
I think the opposition was a little bit early with its applause. I don't know that the minister was finished. If they could just applaud when he's finished answering the question, I'm sure the minister will appreciate it.
And like that's our habit. We will respect the provincial jurisdiction, and we will work with the government of the province.
Good answer.
The honourable member for Beaches, East York. Yes, Mr. Speaker. We heard the Minister of Finance this week. It's risky and reckless, he says, to invest any more in our cities. Well, we saw the evidence this morning of both Liberal and Conservative neglect of public transit in this country. Our largest city shut down by a subway system failure, leaving hundreds of thousands of commuters stranded. But we have a plan, Mr. Speaker, to get transit moving in towns and cities across this country. Will the Conservatives get on board with the NDP's practical plan for public transit?
Exactly what I've said a moment ago, Mr. Speaker. They want to manage on behalf of the municipalities, on behalf of the provinces. We will have to manage day-to-day transits across the country. That's what they think, Mr. Speaker. That's not what we will do. We will transfer the money to the province and municipalities, and we will work with them, not on behalf of them.
The honourable member for La Pointe de l'Île. Since the Senate spending scandal blew up, the Prime Minister's office has been trying to put the lid back on the pot. The parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister and new improvised specialist on ethics has not yet answered our question, so we'll give him another chance. After Senator Housakos was personally appointed by the Prime Minister to the position of Senate Speaker, did the Prime Minister's office provide him with strategic advice to minimize the scandal's damages?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said on a number of occasions, it was the Senate that invited in the Auditor General to review their expenses, Mr. Speaker. Now, what we understand is this, Mr. Speaker, is that when you make a mistake, if it's a deliberate mistake, you should pay it back. Now, the NDP, of course, their mistake wasn't deliberate. They set out a scheme that was hashed in the Leader of the Opposition's office to take money out of the ridings of different members of Parliament to the tune of $2.7 million. They've been ordered to pay that back to their constituents, and they refuse to do that, Mr. Speaker. Instead, they'll be spending the summer in court explaining to Canadians why they refuse to pay them back the $2.7 million they owe them. They should just pay it back.
Honourable member for La Pointe de l'Île. The Prime Minister refuses to answer us, even though it's clear that his office was involved at every stage with this scandal. Once and for all, Canadians deserve an answer. They want to know if the Prime Minister's office is still involved in this Senate scandal. And now, the Conservative Speaker and the Conservative and Liberal leaders, who are all named by the Auditor General in his report on the spending scandal, have implemented a so-called appeal process to defend themselves, a process put in place by the people who are themselves going to use it. So does the Prime Minister agree with that sort of a process? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, the Senate will respond to the Auditor General's report tomorrow. But what is very clear, Mr. Speaker, is that this member who stands up and talks about ethics in the Senate, Mr. Speaker, owes the Canadian taxpayer $27,111, Mr. Speaker, part of a $2.7 million bill that 68 members of the NDP owe the people of Canada. Now, this member is refusing to pay residents in her community back, Mr. Speaker, just as all of the other 67 members of the NDP caucus have, Mr. Speaker. What they should do is look at their constituents and pay them back the $2.7 million that they owe them.
The honourable member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister came to Ottawa promising strong rules to improve accountability in the Senate. Now Conservatives have abandoned any reform. The Prime Minister appointed Senator HoC as Speaker. The Senator then immediately started working with Liberals behind closed doors to devise a new system so Senators could appeal the Auditor General's findings. Was the Prime Minister aware when he appointed him that Senator HoC was making up new rules after learning he was to be named in the Auditor General's report?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senator has already answered that question, but the question that hasn't been answered is why 68 members of the NDP caucus participated in a scheme hatched by the Leader of the Opposition to take money out of the ridings of various members of Parliament and funnel it to an illegal, politically partisan office in Montreal, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Senate, if reports are to be understood, the Senate expenses are about $1 million. The NDP owe $2.7 million back to the Canadian taxpayer, Mr. Speaker. If it's wrong for the Senate, and when you abuse taxpayers' money it is wrong, then it's also wrong for these 68 members of Parliament to refuse to pay taxpayers back.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, New Democrats remain the only party in this House that are pushing for reform and accountability, and Canadians are outraged by the magnitude of the scandal and look to this House for leadership. They don't expect it from the Senate, where we see the men who are in charge of the Senate review are actually named in the report. In fact, the Conservative senator says Canadians owe him thanks, and the Liberal senator, his leader, has been attacking the work of the Auditor General. No accountability, no contrition. So here's a simple reform step. Why don't we just cut off the taps to the trough? Insist on higher ethics standards for them and bring some accountability to this disgraced institution. Will they work with it?
Well, of course, Mr. Speaker, we understand that the NDP have absolutely no respect for the Canadian Constitution, Mr. Speaker, and they actually have no respect for the Canadian taxpayer. Because if they had respect for the Canadian taxpayer, they would be able to look at themselves and say, look, they, the NDP, have used $2.7 million of taxpayers' resources inappropriately, and they would pay it back, Mr. Speaker. But they're refusing to do that, Mr. Speaker, to the point where they're going to have to go to court, and 68 of them squeezed into the defendant's box all summer, Mr. Speaker, explaining to their constituents why it is they refuse to pay them back the money that they owe them.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Well, with answers like that after the next election, I'd suggest the member for Mark Ridges gives his resume to Sepp Blatter. I mean, rather than be the defenseman of Blatter, let's talk about the defensive change. If he wants to clean up the House, let's get rid of that Board of Internal Economy. Let's bring in the Auditor General to look at the oversight mechanism. On the Senate, let's start to deal with the corruption over there. Instead, he stands up and defends the indefensible time and time again. What happened to this Prime Minister who promised Canadians that he would clean up that House of ill repute in the upper chamber?
This is an NDP party that owes 3 times as much as the Auditor General has apparently identified in the Senate, Mr. Speaker. $2.7 million. This is an NDP member who in the last election went to his constituents and said he would vote to cancel the long gun registry, then came to this place, broke his word to his constituents and voted to maintain it, and now supports a leader of the opposition who wants to bring that back, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to accountability and ethics, this member has nothing to talk about.
Order. I'll ask members to try to come to order. I know it's the first day back after weekend, but we're going to be in rough shape on Wednesday if this progresses. The honourable member for Toronto Centre.
Despite celebratory announcements in October and December of 2013, and then again in August and September of 2014, the CETA deal is still not done. Last September's premature party alone cost hard-working Canadian taxpayers nearly $500,000. This government cynically boasts about the number of deals it has signed, but the grim reality is record-high trade deficits of $3 billion and $3.9 billion in March and April. When will this government finally scrap its tired talking points and tell us when CETA will get finished?
Here. The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that no government has done more to advance Canada's trade interests than this Conservative government. My government has concluded free trade agreements with 38 different countries, with many more to come. Had the member actually reviewed the statistics she quoted, she would have found that if you factor out the decline in energy prices, our exports are actually up 6.2% year over year. And our manufacturing-related stats, our sectors have posted double-digit export gains. We'll take no lessons from the NDP when it comes to trade.
The Honourable Member for Lac Saint-Louis. Under heavy pressure from the G7 countries, the Prime Minister has grudgingly committed to an agreement on world greenhouse gas emissions levels by the end of the century. And we're led to believe that Canada allegedly served as an obstacle to a more ambitious agreement. Why are our G7 partners supposed to believe in this government once again, given that its past commitments have been so lacking in credibility and the actions they've taken to fight climate change are so unconvincing? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the G7 has issued a strong and unanimous statement on climate change. We have significantly increased our support for the initiatives that will reduce greenhouse gas for pollutants and that will improve the quality of air for Canadians, and we will invest in transit every year. What do the NDP and the Liberals want? To increase taxes on middle-class families and plunge Canada back into a deficit position and pursue a carbon tax that will be a job killer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century, barely. After immense pressure from the G7 leadership, he reluctantly agreed to a communique that gets Canada out of fossil fuels by the end of the century. However, his minister has only a target of 225 megatons by 2030. She seems awfully keen on many tons, however, on fugitive methane emissions from oil, gas, and fertilizer sectors. Since fugitive emissions are relatively small potatoes on the emissions profile, what's her plan for the rest?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, that's pretty rich coming from the Liberals that did absolutely nothing on climate change other than to name their leader's dog's PO.
Get it done.
We've got a clear record, Mr. Speaker. We're reducing emissions while growing the economy and creating well-paying jobs. We have a balanced approach, and we're going to take a responsible approach. Building on this, the Minister mentioned we will be reducing methane emissions from the oil and gas sector, regulate the production of chemicals and nitrogen fertilizers, and regulate emissions from natural gas-fired electricity generations, Mr. Speaker. And we're going to do that without a job-killing carbon tax.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, the Deschamps report, which was published about a month ago, exposed the serious problems of sexual harassment in the armed forces. To resolve the problem, one solution recommended was to recruit more women into the ranks. But instead of taking the report seriously, we've now learned that the government is preparing to quietly reduce the minimum number of women that must be recruited. Since when are the Conservatives feel that lesser equity among men and women in the forces is a solution to this issue?
Mr. Speaker, I had the honour of serving alongside some exceptional female leaders in the Canadian Armed Forces when I served, and Canada, in fact, is one of the leaders in making sure that we have women at leadership positions throughout the Canadian Armed Forces. That will continue under this government, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. John. Mr. Speaker, it's simply irresponsible for the Minister to allow DND to try to reduce the targets for recruiting women in the Canadian Armed Forces, when we know from the Deschamps report that having more women in the military can be a critical factor in reducing sexual assaults and harassment. This is a classic response from this government and totally unacceptable. They are more interested in saving face than dealing with the deep-rooted problems that continue to contribute to women's inequality in the military. will the minister tell DND to focus on meeting the target for women, not weakening it?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for that question. As he well knows, the Canadian Armed Forces has committed to implementing all of Madame Deschamps' recommendations, Mr. Speaker. We want to encourage young women from across this country to pursue a career in the Canadian Armed Forces, Mr. Speaker, where their leadership will be cultivated and highlighted, Mr. Speaker. Canada is one of the strongest NATO countries in terms of women in the military. We will continue to pursue that and encourage more people to join the Canadian Armed Forces.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
So why are you lowering the targets? Mr. Speaker, once again, Canadian Forces members are being left behind by this government. Those looking for help to get replacement IDs, service pins or other records call the designated line only to be told that it's not staffed due to budget cuts. And there's no use to call back, Mr. Speaker. One reservist says that he's been trying to get help with these basic requests for 5 months. Mr. Speaker, our soldiers deserve so much better than having the books balanced on their backs. Why did the minister cut such basic services that the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces rely on?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Armed Forces is going to ensure that proper information gets out to both current serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces and veterans for their Canadian Forces Decoration service pins. No government, Mr. Speaker, in the history of this country has recognized the service and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform and our veterans more than this government, Mr. Speaker. The 75th Victory Pin for World War II, the Bomber Command Bar, Mr. Speaker, the Year of the Korean War Veteran, Mr. Speaker. We honour and pay tribute to that service, and we will continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Another sign that nothing is going well at DND is the postponement of decontamination at CFB Valcartier, whereas DND had stated that decontamination work for the groundwater in Shannon would start in the summer. We now learn that nothing will know until who knows when, 2016, 2017, even the minister doesn't know. How can the Conservative government continue to put its head in the sand when the health of people in Shannon is being jeopardized? The Honourable Minister.
The Canadian Armed Forces and Department of National Defence has committed to this decontamination project adjacent to Valcartier, Mr. Speaker, and is working with the community of Shannon and the surrounding municipality to ensure that this project is done properly. It is budgeted for, Mr. Speaker, and it will happen.
The Honourable Member for Nipissing-Temiskaming.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear the Liberal leader has only one plan for the economy, and that is to raise taxes. In contrast, we have lowered taxes and created new voluntary options for Canadians to save, like the tax-free savings account. Can the Minister of Finance please update this House on the government's plan to help Canadians save while lowering taxes and creating jobs?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank the member from Nipissing-Temiskaming for his important question. Mr. Speaker, Canadians should be concerned about the Liberal leader's comments at the FCM conference. He said that to fund his infrastructure schemes, he would need to find alternative sources of capital, such as pension funds. So the Liberal leader would undermine the Canada Pension Plan's independence and put our pensioners at risk just to find money for his irresponsible pension schemes. I say, hands off Canada's pensions.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, Ms. Cindy Blackstock is currently fighting the government to gain recognition for injustice victimizing Aboriginal children in terms of social services. But instead of letting the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal do its job, we've learned that the Department of Aboriginal Affairs has been found guilty by the tribunal of having knowingly used retaliation against Ms. Blackstock. Is that how the Conservatives see reconciliation, Mr. Speaker? By punishing those who dare criticize them? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government remains committed to the health, the safety and well-being of First Nations children. Since 2006, our government has increased child and family services funding on reserve by 40%, and we're taking action in collaboration with willing partners to ensure that children and families have the support they need to lead safe and healthy lives. We are reviewing the tribunal decision to determine the next steps.
The honourable member for Algoma Camp.
Here's how committed they are. The Conservatives were so outraged by the abuse of power by a Conservative staffer that they gave the man a promotion. Apparently, retaliating against someone who dares to complain about Conservative discrimination, especially against Aboriginal children, is the perfect qualification for serving as Chief of Staff to the Minister of Natural Resources. This certainly sends a chilling message to any First Nations who want to meet with this minister. So why did the Conservatives legitimize this kind of unacceptable behaviour with a promotion?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, our government remains committed to the health, safety and well-being of First Nations children. We're reviewing the tribunal decision to determine the next steps. But, Mr. Speaker, our government has taken increased child and family service funding on reserve by 40%, and we're taking action in collaboration with our partners to ensure that children and families have the support they need to lead safe and healthy lives.
The honourable member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Well, look, Mr. Speaker, instead of punishing those who dare to speak out to denounce injustice still affecting far too many Aboriginal children, the government should show leadership in advancing towards reconciliation. As a first step, the Prime Minister must use his visit to the Vatican to call for a formal apology from the Pope for the role that the Catholic Church played in the residential school system. Will the Prime Minister seize this opportunity to raise this important issue with the Pope? Yes or no?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government remains committed to a fair and lasting resolution to the legacy of Indian residential schools. As acknowledged in the Prime Minister's historic apology on behalf of all Canadians in 2008, there is no place in Canada for the attitudes that inspired the Indian residential school system to ever prevail again. The Minister of Aboriginal Affairs has written to the provinces, the territories, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Vatican to bring to their attention the report and its recommendations. We will continue to promote reconciliation between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Central.
Speaker, the legacy of the Indian residential schools can best be described as 130 years of intergenerational social tragedy. Now, that's why the Truth and Reconciliation Commission feels it's important that the Pope himself apologize for the role the Catholic Church played. The Prime Minister will be meeting with the Pope this week. So far, he has been deadly silent on any of the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Will he or will he not push the Pope to apologize formally on behalf of the Catholic Church for the role that they played in this intergenerational tragedy?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, we thank the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for their work. We thank the former students for sharing their stories with the Commission and with all Canadians. The Minister of Aboriginal Affairs has written to the provinces, the territories, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Vatican to bring to their attention the report and its recommendations. We on this side of the House will continue to work with Aboriginal Canadians and non-Aboriginal Canadians to continue to promote reconciliation.
The honourable member for Westmount Ville-Marie.
Mr. Speaker, we've just learned that the Supreme Court of Saudi Arabia will maintain the 10-year prison sentence and the penalty as well as the lashes imposed on Mr. Badawi. Mr. Speaker, the time has come for the Prime Minister to take immediate action, to step in, to state that human rights are important, this is intolerable, and that he must be released. Will the Prime Minister take action on behalf of this House, which has expressed itself clearly on this issue in a unanimous motion? The Honourable Minister. The sentence on Mr. Badawi is a clear violation of human rights. We have raised the issue with the Saudi government. This will continue until clemency is granted, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian military plans to lower its targets, currently a modest 25%, for the recruitment of women. This goes against Justice Deschamps' advice in her report on sexual harassment and the hostile environment for women in the armed forces. Plus, the government is currently responding with an internal committee and not the independent response that Madame Justice said is needed at committee. But dropping targets instead of fixing the problems is just a cop-out. Why is reducing the number of women in the Canadian Armed Forces this minister's plan to deal with the awful situation of sexual harassment and abuse in the military?
That's a good question. Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said in a previous question, Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Armed Forces has committed to implementing all of Madame Deschamps' recommendations and learnings from her study of this serious issue, Mr. Speaker. I also said that when I was in the Canadian Armed Forces, I had the honour of serving alongside some exceptional female leaders from across Canada. The Canadian Armed Forces has some of the highest rates of female participation in our military, and this government is committed to ensuring that continues, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Raif Badawi was arrested some 3 years ago in Saudi Arabia, and his inhumane sentence of 1,000 lashes and 10 years in prison has just been confirmed by the Supreme Court of Saudi Arabia. He has no other legal recourse. Will the government send a clear message to the government of Saudi Arabia, stating that freedom of expression is a fundamental right that must be respected everywhere and at all times? And will the government take steps, that's something that it still hasn't done, as part of the movement that is demanding Mr. Badawi's release? The Honourable Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, we are very concerned by the fact that Mr. Badawi has been sentenced to 10 years in prison simply for having exercised his right to freedom of expression. Canadian representatives have raised this matter with the Saudi government, and if will continue to do so until clemency is granted. Thank you. Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, representatives aren't enough. We need some high-level intervention. Blogger Raif Badawi's sentence was confirmed yesterday by the Supreme Court of Saudi Arabia, and it also calls for 1,000 lashes. Since the outset, the NDP has vehemently opposed the unfair and degrading treatment inflicted on this blogger and has demanded the government do everything in its power to ensure Mr. Badawi's release. Will the government finally step up diplomatic pressure on Saudi Arabia to obtain Raif Badawi's release? The Honourable Minister.
Continuously raised this matter with the Saudi government because we consider the punishment of Mr. Badawi to be a violation of human dignity, and we continue to call for clemency in this case. And, Mr. Speaker, that will continue until clemency is granted.
The member for Calgary Northeast.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents in Calgary Northeast and constituents across Canada were pleased to see regulations concerning citizenship revocation come into force. We all know that Canadian citizenship is incredibly valuable and incredibly valued by the people all across the world. Can the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration please explain to this House how these new regulations will protect the safety and security of Canadians from those who seek to harm us?
The Honourable Minister of Citizenship and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, first, I'd like to thank the hard-working member for Calgary Southeast Northeast for his work to strengthen Canadian citizenship. Of course, the new Act will ensure that those who wish to do us harm will not be able to exploit their citizenship in order to endanger our country, our freedoms, our democracy. This government knows that there is no higher duty for any government than to ensure the safety and security of its citizens. And from Afghanistan to Iraq and Syria, we have not been afraid, never been afraid to call jihadi terrorism by its real name. Citizenship revocation will be applied to dual nationals convicted of terrorist offences, high treason, treason, or spying. We want to show that threatening.
The Honourable Member for St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Human Rights Commission is forcing the government to pay First Nations child advocate Cindy Blackstock $20,000 for retaliating against her human rights complaint. They found the conduct of Conservative staffer David MacArthur willful and reckless. Shockingly, Mr. MacArthur was then promoted to Chief of Staff to the Minister of National Resources. Will the government publicly apologize to Ms. Blackstock, and what sanctions will the government impose on Mr. MacArthur?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've said, we are reviewing the tribunal decision to determine the next steps, but our government remains committed to the health and safety and well-being of First Nations children. Since we took office, our government has increased child and family services funding on reserve by 40%, and we're taking action in collaboration with willing partners to ensure that children and families have the support they need to lead healthy and safe lives.
The honourable member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, the government is once again proving its incompetency in the implementation of a single email platform for federal departments. This new system was supposed to be up and running this year, but won't be now until 2016. This just shows the mismanagement by the minister in charge of Shared Services Canada when it comes to managing this project effectively. Instead of blaming others, when will the minister take responsibility for this? The honourable minister.
Being more efficient with the email system, consolidating 63 separate systems into one. That will save Canadian taxpayers money. It will also make the government more responsive to those same taxpayers. Mr. Speaker, this will also increase the security of the system, and once implemented, we will achieve $50 million a year in savings.
Well said. The honourable member for Prince Albert.
This past Saturday marked the 71st anniversary of D-Day. It was on that day, 71 years ago, that Canada and Allied forces stormed the beaches codenamed Omaha, Utah, Sword, Gold, and of course Juno, to begin their successful campaign to liberate Europe from tyranny and oppression. It is our duty to remember those who fought and sacrificed their lives in the name of freedom, peace, and democracy. Can the Minister of Veterans Affairs please update this House on what Canada is doing for our veterans?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Prince Albert for that question. It has been 71 years, Mr. Speaker, since D-Day, and Canadians will never forget that immense sacrifice and the freedoms that were won as a result of it. At our request, the French government has extended their prestigious Legion of Honour program to honour Normandy veterans, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I wrote all members of this House, urging them to work with their Legion and find all of our living Normandy veterans, Mr. Speaker, so that they can receive this high honour from the French government. I'd ask them to make sure that all nomination forms are in by July 10th so we can honour and remember our veterans.
The honourable member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, contrary to any logic, the evaluation process for the Energy East project continues at the NEB, even though we still don't know where the new pipeline, as proposed by TransCanada, will go. The Quebec Minister of Natural Resources and the Ontario Energy Ministry have demanded that NEB explain this decision because they deserve accurate information. Will the minister continue to wash his hands of this or finally demand greater transparency from the NEB? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, unlike the member opposite, we do not take positions on specific applications for energy infrastructure until an independent review is complete. Our government relies on the Independent National Energy Board for decisions related to proposals of energy infrastructure, including TransCanada's Energy's proposal. Our government has been very clear. Proposals will only be approved if they are safe for Canadians and safe for the environment.
The Honourable Member for Bar-Richelieu, Nicolet-Bécancourt. Mr. Speaker, once again, the Prime Minister has shown to the entire world that he's more concerned by the oil industry than with fighting climate change. At the G7, Canada once again expressed reluctance on targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in order to reduce the scope of the agreement that was being prepared. Will the government finally understand, in fact, that the highly polluting fossil energy industry is behind us and that we now need to stimulate electric transportation, namely by putting in place an enhanced eco-auto program? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, as I've already said, the G7 has a strong and unanimous declaration on climate change. Our budget announces action that we will take in order to address climate change and to protect our environment. Our government has reduced GHG emissions, has cut taxes for Canadian families, and we balance the budget. What do the Liberals and the NDP want? They want to hike taxes for the middle-class families, and they want to push Canada into a deficit. They also want a carbon tax that will kill jobs. The Honourable Member for Haute-Gaspésie-Lamitis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the federal government doesn't understand anything about the reality for small communities. In its most recent community infrastructure program announced May 15th, EDC Canada has called on organizations to put forth their projects by June 26th. Now, this deadline is completely ridiculous. It's like they don't want these small not-for-profit organizations to have an opportunity to propose their projects. They can't simply do so quickly. Will the Minister of Infrastructure acknowledge that these deadlines proposed by EDC are unrealistic and that they will in fact deprive organizations of an opportunity to promote their projects? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, this is the third program of the sort that's being managed by EDC. And there have been some 300 calls that have come in since we launched the program. We're going to continue to support seniors clubs. We're going to help them renovate their equipment, and there's no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that there will be a lot of progress. Member for Haute-Gaspésie-Lamitis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's attitude to climate change is shameful. While the G7 issued a communiqué on calling for significant reductions for GHG gases, we've learned that Canada aligned itself with Japan in an attempt to dilute the final text. And what's worse, in the closing statement, the Canadian Prime Minister doesn't even mention a single time that they discussed the environment at the G7. It's as if the problem didn't even exist. Will the government do its share, take action, and join world efforts to fight climate change? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, as I've said in the past, the G7 came out with a strong, unanimous declaration on climate change, and we've increased support to improve air quality for Canadians, and we'll also be investing in public transit each year. Our government has reduced greenhouse gas emissions, we've cut taxes for middle-class families, and we've balanced the budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That concludes question period for today. I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Mr. Randolph Churchill, great-grandson of Sir Winston Churchill and principal spokesperson for the Churchill family. 2015 marks a number of important anniversaries within the legacy of Sir Winston Churchill. It is now 75 years since he first assumed office as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
As well, it is now 70 years since the end of the Second World War and 50 years since the death of this great man.
In order to mark these important anniversaries in the legacy of Churchill, I will be hosting a panel discussion this evening at 6 p.m. in room 237C, and I invite all honourable members to attend. Tabling of documents. Dépôt de documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36.8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 28 petitions.
28. Introduction of introduction of government bills. Ms. Bergen for Mr. Moore, Port Moody, Westwood, Port Coquitlam, seconded by Mr. Duncan, Vancouver Island North, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Copyright Act, Access to Copyrighted Works or Other Subject Matter for Persons with Perceptual Disabilities. This motion is deemed adopted. Ms. Bergen for Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Duncan, Vancouver Island North, moves that the bill be now read a first time and reprinted. This motion is deemed adopted.
First reading of this bill, première lecture de ce projet de loi.
When should the bill be read a second time? At the next sitting of the House.